Welcome to Oneness. Thank you again for joining me in this 81 days journey with 81 verses of Tao Te Ching. Today is day 5 and we will be looking at verse 5 from Tao Te Ching. So before we begin, let's observe a few seconds of silence. Thank you. So now, let's go into the verses. Heaven and earth are impartial. They see the 10,000 things as they are. The wise are impartial. They see people as they are. The space between heaven and earth is like a bellows. The shape changes, but not the form. The more it moves, the more it yields. More words count less. Hold fast to the center. Let's observe a few seconds to sink in with these verses. Alright. So I like to call this verse 5 as a way of being impartial. The reason being, this whole verse, it talks about how to be impartial to every single human beings and every other beings, even objects, how to be impartial to them. Just like heaven and earth, just like how the Tao is. Now, let's go into each line and try to interpret what Lao Tzu would have meant. The first two lines goes like this. Heaven and earth are impartial. They see the 10,000 things as they are. It is so certainly yes. The heaven and earth doesn't distinguish between human beings, plants, animals, insects, bacteria, fungus, or even virus. For them, everyone or every being is same. It doesn't be partial and give favor one over the other, whether it is in giving or taking, whether it be say sunlight, air, earth, or even the rain. It gives unconditionally to every single being of this planet. It doesn't hold back. The heaven and earth just give. At the same time, be it becomes to a destruction. It can be a tsunami or an earthquake or flooding with rain. It doesn't have any preference one being or one form over the other. It simply causes it, the destruction as well as being generous in giving. So the heaven and earth are impartial to every single thing. And here they call it as 10,000 things as they are. So now with that, let's move on to the next two lines. The wise are impartial. They see people as they are. So like a heaven and earth, a sage or the wise one are also impartial with every single person. To understand these two lines, I like to share a story. This is a story about a Zen monk whose name is Kazan. So once he was invited to conduct a funeral of a famous nobleman. So as he was waiting at a funeral and waiting for the other officials and the governor of the province to arrive, he noticed something very strange. His palm in the hand, both the hands started sweating. He observed it and then he felt there is something wrong. So he conducted a funeral and later on that day, he called all his disciples and he said, I think I have not yet reached a place. He said that my palms were sweating when I was expecting the governor and other members of the society or the government. So I'm not yet reached a place whereas I'm seeing everyone who they are. I'm still bound by the social identity and how the hierarchy works. And still, there is some part of me is not fully aligned to see everyone as who they are and treat people as who they are. So what he did, he just went and joined another master as a student. After 8 years, he returned back as an enlightened being, and then he went back to his disciples. The story is like this. So even being a Zen monk, he was able to see that the involuntary response of his body was sweating. So he realized that he is somewhere within himself, deep within. He is not seeing people as they are. Instead, whenever it is a governor and someone of the high status, he is seeing them differently than the other person. So what does it mean to us? So whenever we go through the day, there are so many instances that comes in. We see some people as someone who's lower to us in a standard, be it a wealth or a knowledge or even a spiritual journey. So instead we don't see them as equal to us. So in these words, what they say is that being impartial to every single human being, be it be a king or be it be a beggar, anyone, everyone, no matter of wealth, no matter of anything that separates two different persons. And also this applies to every single beings on this creation. So it can be a dog. How do we treat the dog? Or how do we treat some objects that would be lying around at house, but when we treat them so badly, whereas we just go and store a lot of golds and other things in the locker, but then the other things we simply toss it up. So how do we treat things? So think about it. So now let's move to the other lines. The space between heaven and earth is like a bellows. The shape changes, but not the form. The more it moves, the more it yields. What it means? So here I see it as impartially giving and to others, being generous to every single being or every single thing and every single people, right? So all I mean by this is so whenever even comes to generosity, sometimes we favor one over the other, right? So even in the context that we'll say, oh yeah, so he is my son, so I have to give more to my son, but whereas the other child is there, so we'll just wanted to give one chocolate. So being partial there. So what the words mean is, even when we are generously offering and giving to other people, be impartial. And one of the other thing that we generally see in some of the organizations, even the religious organization and temples, especially in India, that we see that. So even to visit God and have a darshan, sometimes people stand in a queue, the common man who would stand in a queue for hours and hours, whereas there will be a VIP entrance, whereas you can buy the entry ticket and go and see the God much faster than the other person who was waiting for hours and hours. And there are VVIP tickets and etc. If any person, a temple or an organization or a spiritual teacher treats with this inequality, that means they are not completely centered with Tao. Because the way of Tao, it is treat every single human being as equal. There is no special preference to one person over the other. And likewise, when you give generously. Now let's move on to the next couple of lines. More words count less. Hold fast to the center. Here how I see is, even when we are being impartial, sometimes what happens is, there is an urge within us to prove ourselves right. And these two words, what it says is, say fewer words and keep the silent and go back to your self-centered place. So that way, you don't feel an urge to win an argument or win a conversation and make your point. Instead, stay still. And that way, you're on the way of Tao. You're being impartial to everyone. So you don't have to say that my idea is better than yours, or my thought is better than your thought. My perspective about this world is better than your perspective about this world, or my spiritual journey is better than your spiritual journey. You don't classify things. Be impartial and accept things as it is. So that's what verse 5 of Tao Te Ching. With that, we come to our end of day 5 and verse 5. And one actionable thought for today is, as the day goes by, look within and see that how impartial are you to everyone around you. It can be the family member, it can be between your friends, and it also can be the strangers. How impartial are you? Are you treating everyone impartially? And finally, treat every single non-human beings as well equally. So with that, I like to share one small instance from life. So a few years ago, or almost 8 years ago, so once I saw a tiny ant going through the small ways in between my keyboard in my laptop. And all I felt was probably I would hurt that ant. So what I did was I just carefully took the ant and kept it on the desk. And that is when I observed, actually, though my intention was to save the ant, but actually I broke the ant's leg. And the ant was alive, but it was unable to move. It was struggling to move. That's when I felt, what if I am taking walk outside someone's house and just touching their lawn maybe? And what if they just pull me inside and break my legs and just leave me and throw me on the street? Will I consider that to be fair? Of course not. I will get angry. We do these things, though we don't mindfully do it, but then we keep on doing this time to time. Be it be killing mosquitoes, cockroaches, or ants and insects. Of course, I understand that. They may not be good to us. Of course, the mosquitoes can spread disease. That's what we justify as. Or the cockroaches, again, this can spread disease and everything. And ants, that is so annoying to see everywhere, and then it can also bite us. But then, what is a gentler way to handle these things? Think about it. So that way, we be impartial to every single creation on this planet. With that, let's end for today. Thank you.